If you're the kind of person who can handle the darkest corners of the human mind, then buckle in, hit that subscribe button, and prepare yourself, because this story goes places most people would never dare to walk. The screaming started before dawn. Not the usual prison noise, not the steel-on-steel crashes, not the angry curses ricocheting through concrete tears, not even the muffled threats traded between gang members. This scream was different. It was raw. It was terrified. It sliced across the icy air of Pelican Bay State Prison security housing unit, like a blade. When the guards rushed to the segregation pod, they found something no one was prepared for. A man on his knees, hands trembling, eyes fixed on the cell across from him. The cell of Marcus Vale, inmate number 54192, former gang lieutenant, sentenced to life without parole, but known across the yard by another name. The preacher. Marcus wasn't on his bunk. He wasn't pacing his cell. He wasn't even alive. He was hanging, his body swayed from a torn bedsheet tied to the vent grate. Feet inches off the floor, head bowed forward as if praying. But it wasn't the death that sent a ripple of dread through the guards. It was what was painted on the wall behind him, a massive black cross, drawn with blood, and under it, smeared in jagged strokes. He lied. No other inmate in the pod had access to enough blood to paint that message. But Marcus Vale's arms were clean. No cuts, no wounds, nothing that explained how someone created that much red. And the sheet around his neck was tied in a knot he physically could not have reached. That was the moment the case stopped being a simple inmate suicide and started becoming the most unsettling investigation Pelican Bay had seen in years. Detective Elena Merrill got the call before the sun rose. She had worked gang cases, serial cases, prison assaults, and every kind of violent crime imaginable. But something in the sergeant's voice told her this wasn't another routine inmate death. By the time she arrived, the SHU pod was silent, cells locked, inmates watching with the cold curiosity of predators behind glass. Marcus Vale's body had been cut down and laid on a stretcher. His face looked peaceful, almost serene, which didn't match the rest of the scene. Merrill stepped into the cell, her flashlight beam drifting across the blood cross. It had dried in thick, dark streaks. "Numbers don't add up," the crime scene tech murmured beside her. "He doesn't have enough missing blood volume for something this size." "So where'd it come from?" Merrill asked. "We're checking every inmate in the pod." "Someone helped him," she said quietly. "Or someone did it to him." Merrill stared at the vent grate. It was too high for Vale to tie a knot like that without assistance. And the bedsheet rope, it was braided. Tight, clean, professional. Vale wasn't known for neat work. She looked down at his hands. Calloused, scarred, but under the nails, black residue. Charcoal? Ash? Ink? She scraped a sample into a bag. And then she noticed what everyone else missed. Under the bunk, half hidden in the shadows, a scrap of torn paper. She crouched, reached for it, unfolded it gently. A page from a Bible, but not from the prison issue versions. This page was older, yellowed, edges softened by time. On it, a verse was underlined so hard the paper nearly tore. "Nothing is hidden that will not be revealed." And beneath it, written in shaky pencil, "They think they can bury the past, but God keeps score." Merrill frowned. Marcus Vale had been a gang enforcer, a violent one. No history of religion, yet rumors in the prison had changed in the last year. Inmates whispered that Vale had started preaching, talking about redemption, hosting prayer circles in the yard. Some prison staff believed it was an act, a survival tactic. Others, including the warden, insisted it looked genuine. Then there were the darker rumors, that certain inmates wanted him silenced, or that Vale had started keeping secrets about old crimes, ones nobody wanted uncovered. Merrill exited the cell. A group of guards stood nearby, whispering. "Everything all right?" she asked. They stiffened. One guard cleared his throat. "Detective, you might want to hear this." They escorted her to the security office and pulled up the camera feed from Marcus Vale's pod the night before. Merrill leaned forward. The hallway was empty. Cells locked. Lights dim. 1:12 a.m. Vale was lying on his bunk. 1:43 a.m. He sat up suddenly, turned his head, as if listening to someone standing just outside his cell. But there was no one there. 1:52 a.m. He stood, walked to the door, and pressed his hands flat against it. His lips were moving, whispering, talking to someone unseen. 2:10 a.m. He reached for his sheet. 2:11 a.m. The camera flickered. Not long, just half a second. But when it stabilized, Vale was no longer in frame. The sheet was dangling from the vent. He was already hanging. Merrill replayed it 5 times. Vale did not climb, did not tie the rope, did not position himself. One moment alive, one flicker, then dead. "You checked the camera?" she asked tightly. "Already replaced," the guard said. "Internal malfunction." Merrill didn't believe that for a second. She walked out of the office, pulse heavy, mind racing. Prison murders happened. Cover-ups happened. But this felt different. Too precise. Too clean. Too symbolic. As she passed the corridor where Vale had been found, she noticed a janitor mopping the floor. He paused when she approached. A thin man, older, eyes darting nervously. "You okay?" Merrill asked. He hesitated, then whispered, "You're not going to find peace in this one, detective." "Why is that?" He looked around, making sure no guards were listening. "Marcus Vale didn't hang himself," he said, "and it wasn't another inmate." His voice dropped even lower. "It was someone on the outside." Merrill's blood chilled. "That's impossible." The janitor swallowed hard. "Not if they paid the right people." Merrill stepped closer. "Who?" The man's mop trembled. "You ever hear the Red Hand Circle?" "No." "Good," he whispered, "because Vale was trying to expose them, and now they're going to make sure anyone who looks too close ends up like him." Before Merrill could question him further, 2 guards rounded the corner, and the janitor hurried away, disappearing through a side door. Merrill stood alone in the cold fluorescent hallway, staring at the door he vanished through. Something massive was unfolding inside Pelican Bay. Something that extended far beyond its walls. Something someone was willing to kill for. That's when her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. No name. No introduction. Just a single sentence. "If you want answers, check the prison chapel's basement." Merrill's breath caught. Pelican Bay didn't have a basement. Or, at least it wasn't supposed to. And when she opened that hidden door hours later, what she found changed everything. The door to the prison chapel wasn't supposed to open that easily. Detective Elena Merrill pushed it, expecting resistance. A lock, a chain, a guard stepping in to stop her. Instead, the hinges groaned like something long forgotten, and a cold draft swept over her boots. The chapel was small, tucked at the far edge of the prison grounds, more storage space than sanctuary these days. Sunlight leaked through narrow stained glass windows, painting fractured colors across the dusty wooden pews. Merrill's flashlight beam glided across the pulpit. Nothing unusual, nothing out of place, nothing to explain the text message that led her here. But then she noticed something, a faint scuff mark on the floor behind the pulpit. Fresh, recent, too clean compared to the surrounding dust. She crouched, ran her fingers along the edge of the scuff, and felt the slightest seam in the wood. A door, a hidden one. She pressed her shoulder against the wood and pushed. Something cracked, and a panel slid open. A rush of cold, stale air rolled out from the darkness below, air that didn't belong inside a chapel. She aimed her flashlight downward, revealing a steep wooden staircase disappearing beneath the foundation. Pelican Bay had no documented basement, yet this one existed. She drew a slow breath, steadied her hand on the rail, and began to descend. Each step creaked like it hadn't been touched in years, but the footprints in the dust said otherwise. Large, heavy, more than one pair, and one set clearly matched Marcus Vale's boots. Vale had been here. Vale had walked into this hidden space, and whatever he found in the dark below might have been the reason he ended up hanging in his cell. At the bottom of the stairs, the air thickened, colder, damp, carrying the faint metallic sting of old blood. The light revealed a cramped corridor lined with cinder blocks, the walls etched with scratches and markings. Not random ones, not graffiti. These were names, dozens of them, some scratched deep enough to crack the concrete, others barely legible. Names of inmates, dates, numbers, and next to several of the names, an imprint of a hand drawn in red marker, a hand with the thumb bent awkwardly inward, a red hand. Merrill's pulse quickened. The red hand circle. The janitor wasn't lying. The markings were evidence of something organized, ritualistic, a secret faction embedded inside Pelican Bay, a faction Vale had apparently stumbled into or confronted. She kept moving until she reached a steel door at the end of the corridor. A keypad was mounted beside it, its light still glowing green, operational. Merrill looked closer. Smears of black around the numbers. The same residue found under Vale's nails. Her stomach dropped. Vale tried to open this door the night he died. She brushed the keys lightly. 0, 7, 2. 1 were smudged the heaviest. She punched the sequence in. The lock clicked. The door opened. The room beyond was small, no larger than a prison cell. But what sat inside made Merrill's breath stop cold. A makeshift altar. A table draped in a torn bedsheet. And on it, a collection of items laid out with unnerving precision. A binder, thick, stuffed with papers. A contraband phone. A blood-stained handkerchief. A prison guard's ID badge. A black notebook with a single name carved into the cover. Marcus Vale. Merrill reached for the binder first. The cover read simply, RH-07 Operations. She opened it, and the world tilted. Inside were pages of schematics, diagrams, coded messages, guard schedules, inmate transfers, financial transactions, all pointing to a covert network operating inside the prison. Smuggling, extortion, threats, bribes, kill lists. Nearly a dozen guards were implicated. Several names were scratched out, replaced with red hand symbols. But the most disturbing entries were the reports written in shaky handwriting, each labeled Vale. He had been documenting everything. He wasn't preaching redemption. He wasn't turning religious. He was building a case against the red hand circle. And he had almost finished it. Merrill flipped to the last page. There, pinned to the cardstock with rusted paperclip, was a small photograph. A guard, standing in the prison yard, shaking hands with an inmate. The guard's face was partially obscured, but the badge number was visible. Badge number 2873. The blood in Merrill's veins went cold. That badge number belonged to Sergeant Lewis Hale, the same officer who escorted her into the SHU that morning, the same officer who claimed the camera in Vale's pod malfunctioned. Her flashlight flickered. A footstep echoed behind her. Merrill spun, hand on her weapon, but no one was there, just a faint hum of the corridor lights. Only they hadn't been on when she came down here. She took a slow step back toward the stairs. Another footstep echoed. Closer. She killed her flashlight. Listened. A voice whispered from the darkness. Too soft to identify. Too calm. You went too far down, detective. Her heart pounded. Turn the flashlight back on. The voice murmured. You don't want to make this messy. She backed toward the door, pulse hammering in her ears. Her fingers brushed the edge of the steel frame. You found a binder. The voice said, hand it over. Leave the basement. Walk away. And maybe nobody has to disappear tonight. Merrill didn't answer. Couldn't. Her eyes darted across the dark for an advantage. But then she heard something worse than the voice. A click. A radio transmitter. A second voice now. A whisper crackling through the radio. Is she alone? A pause. Then the answer. Yes. And Hale's en route. Sergeant Hale. He was coming. The same man Vale had documented. The same man Vale might have died trying to expose. Merrill clutched the binder tighter. She had only seconds before Hale arrived and sealed off the chapel. Seconds before this basement became a tomb. She flicked her flashlight back on, blinding whoever lurked in the dark, and sprinted up the stairs, taking 3 steps at a time, her breath burning in her throat. Behind her, the voice shouted, "Stop her!" Another set of footsteps thundered up the corridor. Merrill burst through the hidden panel into the chapel, slamming her shoulder into the pulpit as she stumbled. She kicked the panel shut, dragged the pew in front of it, and sprinted for the exit. The chapel doors were just ahead. Just a few more steps. She grabbed the handle and froze. Sergeant Hale stood outside the glass panes, staring straight at her. Not surprised, not confused, smiling. A slow, knowing smile, like he had been waiting for her. The glass door locked with a metallic clunk, trapping her in the chapel. Hale lifted his radio to his mouth, eyes never leaving hers. "Chapel secured," he said softly. "Bring her down." Merrill's blood ran ice cold. They weren't trying to scare her. They weren't trying to stop the investigation. They were trying to erase it, and they were starting with her. She backed away slowly, binder still in her grip, heart clawing at her ribs, as heavy footsteps echoed deep beneath the floorboards. The red hand circle wasn't just real. It was coming for her. And when she turned toward the back of the chapel, she saw something that shouldn't have been there, something that made her breath catch and her knees weaken. Marcus Vale's Bible, lying open on the last pew, with a fresh, wet fingerprint pressed onto the page. There are moments when time slows enough for a person to feel their heartbeat differently, not in their chest, but in their throat, their fingertips, their teeth. Detective Elena Merrill felt every pulse as she stared at the Bible resting on the last pew. It hadn't been there earlier. She had searched the chapel before going down into the hidden basement, but now it sat open, pages trembling from a faint current of air, as if someone had just placed it there. And on the right-hand page, a wet, red fingerprint glistened under the chapel lights, fresh enough to gleam, fresh enough to still be warm. Not blood, ink, thick, dark, the same black substance found under Marcus Vale's nails. Merrill took one slow step toward it. Behind her, Hale's muffled voice echoed through the chapel door. "Don't damage the detective. She has information we need." Then another voice, lower, colder. "Alive or dead?" A pause. "Alive. For now." Her breath stilled. They weren't hiding their intentions anymore. They weren't pretending this was an accident or procedure or security protocol. They wanted her, and the binder, and whatever secrets Marcus Vale had been gathering inside Pelican Bay's hidden underbelly. Merrill forced her gaze back to the Bible. On the page, the verse Vale had underlined before was marked again, this time with a long smear across it. "Nothing is hidden that will not be revealed." The smear wasn't random. Someone had dragged their finger across a verse, toward the margin, toward a small piece of paper tucked between the pages. A note. She pulled it free with trembling fingers. A hastily scribbled message. "If they're reading this, I'm already dead. Check the ventilation shafts. Block C. They keep the real evidence there." Her heart slammed against her ribs. Vale's handwriting. Shaky, uneven, desperate. A second line was written in a different pen, darker, bolder. "Hale is part of it. Don't trust his team." Then a final line, added in what looked like charcoal. "They think they own this prison. Prove them wrong." Footsteps thundered on the chapel steps. No more time. Merrill tore the note free, shoved it into her coat, grabbed the binder, and darted toward the back exit door, a small metal utility door rarely used by staff. She slammed her shoulder into it, praying it wasn't rusted shut. It opened, barely. She squeezed through just as the chapel's front doors cracked open behind her, Hale's voice echoing through the sanctuary. "Fan out. She's inside." Merrill raced across the narrow maintenance path behind the chapel and cut toward the fence line. The prison yard buzzed with morning movement. Guards radioing in, inmates marching in control lines, the clang of gates shifting in the distance. But she wasn't running toward the main yard. She was heading for Block C. The note from Vale wasn't a trap. It was a map, and it was her only chance. She slipped through a service gate using the emergency release lever she'd noticed days earlier. A gap in protocol Hale likely didn't expect her to know about. Once inside the Block C utility corridor, she pressed herself against the wall, listening. Voices drifted from around the corner. Guards. Hale's men. They say she went through the chapel exit. Think she saw the basement? Doesn't matter. Hale said she won't make it out. She gritted her teeth and moved silently past the electrical panels until she reached the base of the ventilation shaft Vale mentioned. A large grate covered the opening, bolted down but old, rusted, weakened by time. She crouched, pulled a multi-tool from her jacket, and began loosening the bolts. Each turn of the screws echoed louder than she wanted. The hum of the prison made it worse. Machinery, radios, boots striking concrete. She worked as fast as she could. Bolt 1, bolt 2, bolt 3. The fourth was almost loose when she heard the sound she had been dreading. Boots. Fast. Approaching. She ripped the grate free just as 2 guards rounded the corner. There! Marrow dove inside the shaft, dragging the grate halfway back into place. A batten struck the metal with a heavy clang, and she crawled deeper, heart hammering, binder strapped to her chest. The shaft narrowed after a few feet, forcing her onto her elbows. The air was dry, dusty, filled with the smell of old insulation. Her flashlight beam revealed carvings on the metal walls, words scratched in desperation by inmates who'd once tried to escape. Help me? Not safe. The red hand is real. She kept moving until she reached a junction box. Something was wedged behind it. A sealed plastic envelope. Vale's evidence. She pulled it out and scanned the contents quickly with her flashlight. Photographs of guards exchanging items with inmates. Lists of payments. Contraband tracking logs. Inmate statements detailing coercion, threats, setup jobs. And one final piece, a signed affidavit written by Marcus Vale himself. It was dated 3 days before his death. He wrote that Sergeant Lewis Hale was using the Red Hand Circle to run a racketeering operation inside Pelican Bay, controlling drugs, weapons smuggling, inmate movements, and targeted suicides. Vale claimed he had proof. Vale claimed Hale threatened him. Vale claimed he feared the prison chapel was being used to hide illicit exchanges. And the last line, circled twice. If I die, it won't be by my hand. Footsteps echoed above the shaft, heavier this time. Hale! Marrow, he shouted. You're making this worse than it has to be. She froze. Come out, he called. You're not going to win this. We own this place, and we always have. She didn't respond. Hale's voice dropped, almost amused. You know what Vale's real crime was? He forgot that this prison eats anyone who tries to change it. He thought he found God. He thought he found redemption. A pause. He found me. Marrow crawled backward deeper into the shaft, searching for another way out. Her flashlight beam scanned the rivets, the bends and the ductwork, the faint outlines of another grate farther down. Hale kept talking. You think you'll expose us? You're alone. No backup. No witnesses. And once we retrieve what you stole, we'll make sure your death looks like a tragic accident. Another detective falling during a suspect pursuit. Her hand found the next grate. Loose. Weakened. Perfect. She kicked it. Once. Twice. The metal snapped free, falling into the laundry chute room below the crash. Behind her, Hale shouted, There! She's moving. Marrow dropped through the opening and hit the laundry carts hard, pain shooting through her ribs. She shoved herself up, clutching the binder and evidence envelope, and sprinted into the textile room. An industrial washer droned loudly in the corner, drowning out the noise behind her. She burst through a side door into a hallway, and nearly collided with 3 officers running toward her. Not Hale's men. Internal Affairs. The lead agent froze when he saw her. Detective Marrow, we got your anonymous message. Is it true? Do you have evidence on Hale? Marrow stared in shock. Anonymous message? I didn't send. A sudden realization hit her. Vale, he had sent something before he died. Something that triggered IA to investigate. She shoved the binder and envelope into the agent's arms. This contains everything. Hale's running a criminal network inside the prison. He killed Vale. He's trying to kill me. The agents looked at the evidence, and their faces paled. Behind them, 2 more agents stormed into the hallway, guns drawn. Incoming, an officer shouted. Hale's unit is pushing this way. Chaos erupted. Shouting, footsteps, radios blaring. Marrow moved behind the IA team as they formed a defensive line. The hallway exploded with noise as Hale's men rounded the corner, but when they saw IA agents facing them, armed, Ready? They froze. Hale stepped forward. His confidence faltered for the first time. What is this? The IA lead agent held up the binder. Your career ending. Hale's face twisted, rage, shock, panic mixing into something wild. You think you can take me down with a few papers? You don't know who you're dealing with. Merrill stepped forward. No, she said, but Marcus Vale did. Hale turned toward her, and in that moment, realizing everything was collapsing around him, he lunged for his weapon. But IA was faster. A single command roared through the hallway. Drop it. And Hale froze. Surrounded. Outnumbered. Caught. His weapon clattered onto the floor. Officers tackled him, ripped the radio from his vest, and cuffed him as he screamed threats about connections, power, influence, everything slipping through his fingers. Merrill exhaled shakily. It was over, or so she thought. As Hale was dragged away, he twisted back toward her and hissed one sentence that chilled her deeper than anything else he'd said. You got Hale, he whispered, but you didn't get all of us. That night, after the arrests, after the evidence was logged, after hours of statements, Merrill sat alone in her car outside Pelican Bay, staring at the prison chapel silhouetted against the fading light. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Just one message. Vale wasn't the only one keeping score. She stared at it for a long time. Too long. In the silence of the car, another message arrived. A picture. A handprint. Read. Thumb bent inward. The symbol of the circle. And beneath it, a final line. You exposed one branch, not the root. If you think this story was intense, wait until you see what comes next.